Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your main Valstride, and today we're going to be taking a look at all of the strongest Animon in Lumentale. Let's check it out. Alright, so the way I'm going to break this video down is by the Animon's typing, and I'm going to be ordering them by their total stat pool. Now, obviously, this is by no means the only important consideration because we also need to consider the team synergy, the available skill pools, and importantly, the skill points, which this analysis doesn't fully account for, but we will make mention of that throughout the video. But despite all of those shortfalls, the raw stats are still a very good indication of each Animon's overall power level, and it will, at the least, hopefully serve as a baseline guide that you can use in your team building considerations. So throughout the video, I'm going to be going through the top 5 for each typing, and there will be timestamps available in the description down below if you want to jump around. But before that, here's a quick visual summary of the strongest Animon in each stat category for each typing. So depending on what you're looking for to fill out your team, be it sweepers, walls, or just all-rounders, then any Animon in this table is going to be a solid choice. Alright, so let's kick this off with the data typing, and remember, if you guys enjoy the content, like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps support the channel a lot. But our top 5 here are going to be Kentaurus, Goldrago, Xenocor, Anazord, and then Patreon. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on each individual Animon going into depth. I'm just going to be talking about macro level ideas and the standout stats among all of the pool here. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time, if any, talking about the legendary Animon. So they're always going to be at the top end of these stat pools, and I did feel like it was important to include them, but I also feel like they're less interesting than everything else going on. So of the others, we've got Goldrago and Xenocor with equal 564 base total stats, and these are going to be your go-to special attack sweepers with a pretty high special attack among them. Xenocor does win out with the highest in the entire typing, and it is going to be a little bit faster, so it's more of a glass cannon playstyle, which I personally prefer. But if you do want something a little bit bulkier with more well-rounded stats, then Goldrago is going to be the go for you. And if you're looking for a physical attack sweeper, then your go-to is going to be Anazord with this 127, which is the highest outside of the Kentaurus, and it is also going to have really good defensive stats. We've got 99 HP, and then we've got this highest in the category special defense here, and then lastly we've got the Patreon, which is kind of just chilling down the bottom here. It does make it into the top 5, but I feel like it's quite a bit worse than everything else. Next up, we've got the grass typing. Now, you're probably already noticing that we don't have a lot of potential for sweepers here because, broadly speaking, grass types are going to perform better as bulky supportive Animon, which is totally fine, and that is certainly going to be the case for both Barangu and Papako, who are incredibly bulky. Now, of the two, it does look like Barangu is just almost strictly better, at least from a pure stats perspective, but this is where stats don't tell the entire story, because Papako also comes with the ability Protective Instinct, which is going to make it much harder to kill. It's going to reduce its incoming damage, and it is also going to increase the healing for your entire team. The other thing that these stats don't quite show, though, is the amount of skill points that each of these Animon is going to bring to your team, and Barangu is going to bring 3 instead of the usual 2, which is a massive consideration and is going to allow you to do way more cool stuff on any given turn. So both of these are going to be good options depending on which of those two things that we just talked about you value more. And then we've also got Florenco down here, who is also going to be a really good supportive Animon, and notably it does have the highest agility within the typing, which is especially important on your supportive Animon because it means you can get your buffs off before everything else that happens, and you can also get your heals in before the enemies are able to get their attacks off if you're on a subsequent turn or something like that, or you might just want to pop a shield, whatever it may be. The agility is especially valuable. And then finally, we've got Pinaflage, who does make for a pretty decent physical attacker if that's your vibe. Let's keep moving though, so we can talk about Ancient next, but this one is a little bit boring in my opinion because the top end is just riddled with legendary Animon, but I do want to give some credit to Emdraquin, who is easily one of my favorite designs in the game. I think this dude looks sick, and it's also going to be incredibly powerful as well. And once again, the stats don't tell the entire story because Emdraquin actually has the same ability as Papako in Protective Instinct, which is going to boost your team's healing and make it harder to kill. So I've got this idea for a team that I've started to put together, which is just going to be all of these incredibly bulky synergistic healing Animon that hopefully will just be incredibly annoying to take down, and Emdraken is going to be my main sweeper for that team. It does have both good special and physical attack, which is really nice because you've got the option there and you can just slot this in depending on what other Animon you have. So if you've already got a good physical attacker, maybe you want to lean into the special, and then vice versa if you've got the other way around. As for the fire Animon, our top 5 are going to be Blumester, both the fire and the electric variant, which just switches their primary typing around. And then we've got Morsiva, Gorius, and Materia. Now, Gorius and Materia are both going to make pretty well-rounded sweepers. Gorius is going to be more physically oriented, and then Materia, you can go either way. But this is where I want to quickly switch back over to our best in slot chart, because there are actually 3 Animon which all top the fire typing in a particular stat, but still didn't make it into our top 5 based on their overall stat pools. So as you can see, we've got Impetoad up here, who leads the way with a base HP stat of 108. And then we've got Nafandel, who is actually tied for the second highest special attack in the game at 144. And then Fulgaze, who has the highest agility among the fire types at 104. So again, the top 5 doesn't tell the entire story, but I had to draw the line somewhere. Now, Impetoad is especially noteworthy in my opinion, because it's another one of those few Animon that have 3 skill points, and it also has some incredibly powerful abilities, being Handyman, which allows you to sacrifice one of those skill points in order to increase the damage of your entire team, and then it also has Healing Charge, which increases the damage of your next attack based on the healing that it provides to allies, which makes a lot of sense given that it's a Felicious type, so it's going to be doing a bunch of healing in general. Next up, we've got Water, and this is another one where we'll jump back into the best in slot chart in just a moment. But for the top 5, we've got both Blumester variants, and then we've got Dolagami, Chromora, and Incantress. Now, Dolagami is incredibly bulky and is going to be a really good supportive healer. They're going to have access to both ibuprofen and painkiller as their healing options. And then she's also going to just be the Felicious typing, which allows your attacks to do some healing as well. And she's also going to give you 3 skill points off the rip. So definitely a valuable consideration if you're looking for that supportive role within your team. And then Chromora is going to be another one of those incredibly tanky Animon that have the protective instinct, which boosts your entire team's healing. So that's one I'm considering for my super bulk team. And then Incantress actually comes with 3 skill points as well, but you do have to have a specific ability. I forget exactly which ability it is, but one of its abilities is going to give you 3. As for the other considerations though, Obsidiedge earns itself a place at the top of both the HP and attack stat pools. So if you're looking for a bulky physical attacker, that might be the go for you. And then we've also got Clawler, who takes it out with the top defense of 104. And finally, Nalumbia, who has the top agility stat of 95. As for the top 5 Aura Animon, this is going to be a pretty interesting list as well. So both of the Vortail evolutions are going to make it into the list. Versazen is going to be the bulkier of the 2 options. However, Wayfoon is going to be one of the best sweepers in the game, in my opinion. So Wayfoon actually is tied with Nafandel for the second highest special attack in the game, a monstrous stat of 142, and it also has the highest Aura agility with 118, which is an incredibly high number. I think this puts it in the top 3 or 5, somewhere really near the top of the list. So you are going to be guaranteeing that you lock in some of those early turns. So again, just a fantastic sweeper option in Wayfoon. And then we've also got Chromora, who we've already talked about in our previous list when we looked at Water. So again, that's a nice bulky option. And then we've got Patround, the pursuit mode. So we already checked this one out when we talked about data. And at this point, we are going to start getting a few repetitions with Animon of dual typings reappearing throughout the list just because their base stats are so strong. Which brings us on to Virus next, where we've got Nuclear leading the way, followed by Delagami, who we've already talked about, and then Megamatosa. Now, of these 2, they're going to be fairly interchangeable. Personally, I prefer Delagami just because it's got the higher agility stat, but they're both going to be decently bulky, and sometimes you might want to be going with Megamatosa if you actually want to be acting last in the turn order so that you can heal up your Animon after the enemy attacks. So you sort of let the enemy get an attack off in that way. But I prefer to play it the other way around, where you can try and get a shield going first or a buff in. So I value that agility quite a lot, but I can see a case being made for either side. And then we've got Venomira next, who is a decent physical attacker with a pretty high agility, highest in slot actually. And then we've got Nafandel, who is going to be the go-to special attacker. Now, I think I mentioned that this was tied with Wayfoon, but it is going to be 2 stat points higher. So that is incredibly powerful. The biggest downside of Nafandel is that it has this incredibly low agility, which is kind of not really what you want for a sweeper unless you've got a whole lot of speed control on your team. But if you are facing off against a Nafandel, I would definitely recommend trying to target this down before it gets an attack off, because it is going to hit incredibly hard. Let's keep moving though to check out Ice next, and the top 5 here is Iatamor, Versatility, Arcrex, Disbublin, and Lapiuna. Now, I'm probably butchering some of these pronunciations, I do apologize, but my boy Arcrex is in here, and he's going to have a monstrous attack stat of 107, leading the way as far as ice typings. I will say though, overall, ice feels pretty lackluster. I don't know exactly what it is, but all of these are just kind of well-rounded Animon. They're not doing anything particularly special, at least when compared against the rest of the field, and it doesn't give a lot of utility either. Now, maybe eventually, once we've established more of a PvP meta, it might be a really good meta choice. If there's some powerful Animon that are weak to ice, then it might find its place there, but at the moment, I just feel like it's a bit lackluster. Let me know in the comments down below if you disagree, but that's kind of where I'm sitting with it at the moment. We've got Versatility, who is probably the most notable. He is incredibly bulky, so he's got that going for him, but he's not really like a great sweeper or anything like that, at least not compared to the Wayfoon variant, which I think is significantly better. So I'm a little bit disappointed with Ice in its current state, even if Arcrex is one of the coolest Animon in the game. However, lackluster is not the word that we can use when talking about electric, because this is full of incredibly powerful options, many of which we've already talked about during the other typings though. So both Blumester variants are up here, and we mentioned them during the fire typing. The exception to that is going to be Visavolt, who is electric ancient, and he actually didn't make the top 5 for ancient, but he does make it up here when it comes to the electric Animon. And then we've got Xenocor and Anazard, who we talked about when we looked at data. So these two are going to be incredibly good. We already know that Xenocor is an absolute beast when it comes to the special attack and this monstrous agility stat. So if you're looking for a very fast special attacker, Xenocor is probably one of the best, other than Wayfoon, who we talked about earlier as well. Both are going to be incredibly good. It just depends on what typings you want, and why not go with both? You know, like, you can just do that. So that option is available to you. If you do want a physical attacker though, then Visavolt is going to be the option here. I just wish that Visavolt had like a little more agility. It doesn't need to be as high as Xenocor's, but 80 feels like pretty low for a sweeper. I wish it was pushing more like that 90 mark, and then I think we'd be talking. This is a monstrous stat though, and he is fairly bulky. And I think if you're looking for electric attacks specifically, then Visavolt might be the better option, because it's got access to a better move pool, I think. So it's got Bolt Rush, for example, which is going to attack all of the enemies, and that is going to scale off of your physical attack. So that's a really nice choice. I know Xenocor does have some attacks that can hit like 3 targets, but it also comes with recoil. So personally, I prefer Visavolt as far as move pool goes for electric attacks, but Xenocor does just have some good data attacks as well. So like, you can't really argue with these stats. Both are going to be incredibly good. I think Xenocor is going to be a little more relevant in the meta, to be honest, but I just like Visavolt, all right? He's just a big tanky tiger, and I think that's really cool. So leave me alone. I think it's neat. But we've got just a few more to go, so let's talk about the demon type next. And the top 5 here is going to be Eodomor, Morsiva, Goldrago, and Horoga as the evolutions for our Celebel. And then we've got Disbublin. Now, sitting just outside of this top 5 is Impitoad at number 6. His stats didn't quite get him up here, but I would actually go as far as to say that Impitoad is probably better than all of the Animon on this list, just because of its overall utility, its move pool, and its abilities, and the fact that it gives you that extra skill point. So again, stats don't tell the entire story, but as far as our top 5 goes, both of the Goldrago and Horoga evolutions for Celebel are going to be pretty good sweepers. If you are looking for a special attacker, then Goldrago is going to be the angle that you want to go for, and then you've got Horoga with this high physical attack. Again, the speed on Hiroga is pretty horrendous, so it is going to be moving pretty clunky. But, you know, if you can find ways to make do with that, if you've got a bunch of speed control or something like that, then this might be the option for you. It is going to hit incredibly hard, so let's not discount it. I just think this speed stat makes it a pretty awkward sweeper. Next up, we've got Geo, and this is another incredibly competitive typing. So once again, sitting just outside of the top 5, we've got Papaco, and we've already talked about all of the reasons why Papaco is great, but the top 5 itself consists of Julian, Kokpol, Barangu, Materia, and then Scaraburst. Now, Scaraburst is particularly noteworthy because it's even better than its raw stats show. So it is going to make for an incredibly powerful special attack sweeper, but when you pair it with I think the Animon is called Sphyter, which is the electric water hammerhead shark looking dude, it is going to get even more powerful, and that is thanks to its ability Cathode, which is going to boost all of its stats whenever it is in party with an Animon who has the Anode ability, and that is where Sphyter comes in. So you pair those two together and you get an incredibly powerful team, and I think that makes this one super underrated, and it's a ton of fun to use. But we've got just 2 more to go, so Chakra is going to be next, and this one is fairly top heavy in my opinion. We've got Connectical leading the way, but interestingly enough, it doesn't actually lead the way in any specific stat category, even if it is the most well-rounded with the highest base stats overall. And then behind that, we've got Gorius, who is just an absolute beast, leading the way in 3 of these categories. And then we've got Wayfun, who we've already talked about a bunch because this dude is an absolute monster. So we've got this massive special attack and this super, super high agility. And then we've got Gongbog and Natmas below that, who are just like, they're meh, they're fine. I don't know, maybe I'm missing some use case for these guys. If you really need a Chakra Felicius Animon, then this might be the go for you, but like, I don't know, they're pretty mid. And then finally, we've got Anomalous, which is pretty much just the Magitsun show, so there's not really much to analyze in here. This dude is just leading the way in every single category, and we're just filled with legendaries across the board. Our boy Gorius does make it in here though, but to just emphasize the sort of power discrepancy, we just saw Chakra where Gorius was all the way up at number 2, and down here he's relegated to number 5, not leading the way in a single category. But nonetheless, an incredibly powerful Anomalous sweeper if you are looking for one of those that is not a legendary. But that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully this helps you put some of your teams together. I know I've been starting to work on a few teams and prepare myself for PvP. Really looking forward to that. So if you do want to see more of that to come, make sure you subscribe to the channel. But otherwise, thank you all for watching. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.